My name is Abhay, and I share conversations with talented and interesting individuals linked to the global Indian and South Asian community. It's informal and informative, adding insights to our evolving cultural expressions, where each person can proudly say, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." I'm Abhay, and on this episode of Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing, a conversation with singer, performer, and hip-hop artist Raja Kumari. Stay tuned. So I've always been fascinated by how we introduce and even reintroduce ourselves. Sometimes it's a completely unfamiliar situation, and a fresh and true orientation is required. When you're a child, or you're naive to the environment, it helps to have an experienced or more seasoned facilitator. But as you mature and become more confident, or if it's just super comfortable, it's often rejuvenating and empowering to just own the encounter and declare yourself. Speaking of owning it, thank you so much for listening to the show, for subscribing and downloading and rating the podcast on your favorite platform, and for following on social media at Dr. Abhay. So finding that sweet spot of liberation and empowerment can be so challenging for Indian Americans, as we're often filled with so many blends and bridges, classical and contemporary, old and new, desi and diasporic. And for many, searching for that sweet spot spawns moments of artistic clarity and resonance. And this is squarely where we find hip-hop artist, singer, and performer Raja Kumari. She's an American, born Sweta Yalapragada Rao, in Claremont, California, who grew up incredibly rooted in Indian culture, with classical Indian music as a soundtrack and intensive training in Bharatanatyam, Kathak, and Kuchipudi. At 14, Sweta started performing as a hip-hop artist under the name Raja Kumari, rapping and writing her own songs, and learning and collaborating with Timbaland, Dr. Dre, Gwen Stefani, Fifth Harmony, and Iggy Azalea. Along the way, she's released a number of hit singles and EPs, and now moved to Mumbai to concentrate on professional work, as well as interests in philanthropy and mentoring other artists. This summer, after forming her own independent music label, Godmother Records, she released her latest work, the single Made in India, a feature on Rashi Sood's single Out of Love, and her latest EP titled H.B.I.C, a collection of unapologetic and richly confident and empowering expressions of her individual journey. We caught up recently, and as I listened to Raja's music, I wanted to ask her if what kept going through my mind as a listener was driven and motivated by an epiphany or a story. When I listen to this new album and this new EP, the word I keep thinking of is liberating.
Yes.
You know, was there some sort of epiphany or perspective that's blossomed into this expression?
The story. I mean, both years of the pandemic, I was very limited from releasing music. I, signed to Mass Appeal. I signed to Nas, one of the greatest rappers of all time. And I just assumed this is it. This is my cosign. There's no bigger cosign in hip hop. I'm the only female ever signed to Nas in history.
Yeah.
So this has to be it. And then the pandemic immediately, and we try, like everyone, we tried to figure it out. And then around August, it was just, I got shelved. So I feel like during those 2 years, we saw the rise of so many artists that took advantage of the captive audience. You see AP Dhillon just become a superstar icon, out of nowhere, just skyrocket, and Anuv Jain. There was other fusion artists that really, really dominated during that time. And I just felt like I was watching everything from a prison. And I have so much, whatever I released on H.B.I.C, everything but The Dawn was done for 2 years. You have to understand, I've had this music. And I think watching, just being so restricted after really being the author of my own identity for so long, and the cosign of all cosigns not being enough for America to all of a sudden just put me on the level of, Doja Cat and Meg Thee Stallion and the people that I believe that I'm competitive with, those people that I'd like to be competitive with, that I would like to be seen on the same level with, the cosign wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And, I realized after 7 years of being in the music industry, I basically realized that I was always the one with the vision behind it. I was always the one funding it, you know, and whatever was going to happen was only going to happen through me. And what was the point of everyone else owning it when I was spending all the money and the sweat equity and the creativity? Because this industry is an industry where you become the mood board for
Right.
everyone.
Right.
And I just felt like I didn't want to do that free service anymore. You know, I was like, I need this to really be what I want to say. And I knew that music was meant to come out. So
And, you know, is the ownership part, like the ownership and the self-determination, it makes it almost so much easier to be liberating. But I can imagine that artistically and professionally, it must be like just this huge not just sense of relief, but just so many open windows now.
you know, I really feel like I was in a rat race.
Yeah.
You know, like I really feel like I would be putting out numbers, but it's all about like random people's temporary perspective. Like if I got them to believe in it, will they believe in it 4 days later after they see a meme? You know, like it was so subjective. Like it was crazy. And the numbers that my male counterparts were doing, if I was doing the same numbers, I was not getting the same funding, the same care.
Right.
And it was just like so exhausting. And I just got stuck in this like chaotic loop of like constantly trying to prove to everyone how important this is and how great I am, and never getting the validation that I really wanted from outside, and just going inward. The pandemic made me stop and go inward. And I realized that like lasting happiness is only going to come from me looking at what I've built for myself. And I looked around and I was like, I have done every job. Like, you know, when they say the CEO has done like the janitor job all the way to the top,
Right.
man, I have done every job in my career.
Yeah.
And I just looked around and I was like, I don't want anybody to restrict me. And you have to tell you something, this release, out of every song I've ever released in my life, I don't even know how many songs I've released, but there's a lot. This was the most relaxing and most like fun experience, because I personally designed that entire Instagram rollout. I decided to wipe my whole page and fix it. Like I did all the captions. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But I decided how I was seen.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And then there was no like, let me make sure the head of the label still thinks that I'm like, my chubbiness is not a problem. And they think if I get skinny that I'll get more plays. Like I am exhausted of everybody's like their decisions about how I'm supposed to be. When it's like, if you put nothing between us and the music.
It must feel wonderful to have that level and layer of control. I read something where you wrote that some of the sincerity on H.B.I.C. came from kind of losing those inhibitions, right? It's just like, hey, look, these inhibitions are gone. I wonder what some of the inhibitions, I mean, you mentioned this already, right? What some of the inhibitions or barriers that have created that friction, you know, in creating the art in the past, where it feels like it's such a burden.
Yeah, I mean, I think I realized that I wasn't enjoying my releases. Like a song would come out and I'd be like, whatever, this is all I could do. Like, you know, I had a song with French Montana. And this was like right when I signed, they were like, who do you want to collaborate with? And everything is there for you on a plate of gold when you first sign. But then they put French on the record very early. But because I don't control every aspect, you know, of the situation, there were some mistakes made and paperwork wasn't done properly, and he was paid but not paid enough, and he wasn't going to come for the video.
Right.
Then there was some like weird things that I got brought into, like if you can deliver this, he'll come. And it's like, no, I can't. Like this is not my job. So I started to realize I'm doing everyone's job.
Yeah.
You know? And this song actually is what held my project back for 2 years, because everyone was like, this is the big one. Capitol Records was like, this is the big one. And at the end, they didn't protect me. Like it came out without French, and it delayed my career for 1.5 years because everyone was talking about this song, and then they just released it unceremoniously. Like it got less views than my regular songs. And it just, that was such a lesson. Yeah. That I was waiting on French Montana to do it for me and these people. And because I was not in control of I didn't know, I wasn't doing the lawyer stuff. I wasn't overlooking everything because I didn't check the contract, that they didn't give him a contract when they gave him money. These are all the things that I pay attention to. That's why I was in that position, you know? So the song it exists. It's out there, you know, one day maybe people will hear it, but I think I just got mad and told you a random story. I'm sorry. I'm like, what was the question? I'm like, I'm here to rant about French Montana. I'm just kidding.
I sort of love it. You know, ranting is cathartic.
I just don't care anymore. You know, it's funny. Like I can say whatever I want because they know the truth. I know the truth. And I'm not saying anything mean. I'm just saying what it is. Like enough women don't speak out about how they are held back in industry in different ways. Like, I'm sure if I was a different type of girl, my music would have been a lot more places. But I chose to not go that route, you know? And
I was just going to say, it's also about being who you are. And I
yeah.
wonder if that spirit of control and that spirit of ownership and that spirit of almost like the licensure to say, it's my risk, but I own it. And I wonder if that's what's really required to be an independent artist. And I wonder if honestly that's the spirit that has to be there when you establish a label, Godmother, in that way.
Oh yeah. It's definitely stressful because like I used to just like it's very easy for us to just be like, oh, the label's gonna pay for it. Oh yeah, it's a $50,000 video.
Yeah.
Easy. That's how much it costs. Then you start writing the checks and you're like, oh my God,
Right.
please buy less water bottles. Like, you know, you're like, oh my God,
Right.
is this necessary? You know? But I did like this huge production for the Made in India video, you know,
Yeah.
from H.B.I.C, that the EP with Madhuri Dixit. I directed it. Like, talk about taking control. That was a crazy experience. Like, like doing line by line from this second to this second, camera pans to Madhuri's eyes, close up, edit fast. Like, it was so rewarding also because to do 26, 27 music videos, probably direct a lot of them, but never take credit and then step into that position and have it be Madhuri. I
Yeah.
was like, someone tell me that I can't do this. Like, somebody come and tell me that this can't be done because I'm going to show you it being done right now. Like,
Well, and the gratification factor must just be, off the charts with that, right? Because, for you, it's not only just the product that and the outcome, but the journey to get there.
oh man, it was really crazy to just be standing there. One, to be directing Madhuri on the microphone, just like
Yeah.
feeding her the lyrics, because she was like, "Tell me the lyric before the lines." I'm like,
Right.
"Made in India." She's like, "Made in India, made in India, made in India." You can see so it was like so funny. Like, the footage exists. I'm putting out the BTS. People can see this crazy situation. But yeah, I reflected on it a lot, like as a child, like because that moment when we reveal Madhuri is kind of like the manifestation in my mind. Like,
Yeah.
she is the epitome of everything. She was so far away from me as a little girl in Los Angeles, like growing up in Claremont, California.
Yeah.
That was my connection to Indian art. And then to say I'm made in India, to make this bold statement, like, clearly I'm born in America, but dekhna tu mera ye chehra, this is
Right.
made in India. Like,
Yeah.
stop playing me. And just so you don't talk shit, here's Madhuri Dixit to give me a cosign real quick.
Yeah.
So you can't really say nothing, you know?
You're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. After a quick break, let's come back to our conversation with Raja Kumari. Welcome back to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. Let's rejoin our conversation now with Raja Kumari. And I was going to say, I mean, you and I both grew up in Southern California, and certainly it's for me, we both have deep roots in India physically, but obviously culturally as well. And your vehicle of expression blends so much of those experiences together. It's the LA, it's the Claremont, it's the California experience, it's the music behind that, it's all the cultural roots that you have as well. But I wonder if sometimes this lane can be or feel lonely as an artist, right?
Oh my God, so lonely.
Yeah,
So lonely.
but is that also the price of being an innovator in this space?
You know, that's so crazy you said that because this is like literally the things I'm healing over right now. Like, these are the things that my close friends and I are discussing, is that I will get like very like fixated on the fact that, like, to pursue this, to push Indian music forward in the mainstream worldwide, I had to move completely alone to Bombay.
Yeah.
You know, I have to be away from my entire family for the last 5 years and like find a new family here and find myself here. And yeah, because I have not focused at all on my personal life, I've only focused on Raja Kumari, the brand.
Yeah.
I do find it very lonely, you know. But then my friends told me, they were like, you know, the people that are blazing the trail, the people that are out there physically making way for other people are usually by themselves. But I feel like it doesn't have to always be like that. I think just accepting that I felt lonely and that I do feel lonely made me understand that I'm not taking care of myself as a person, that I find myself feeling that music is divine. So, you know, as a classical dancer, we give our art, you know, like, even I'm talking and I'm like, I'm offering it.
Yeah.
And I think I bring that into my music, but that doesn't mean I need to give all of my personal energy to this, because
Yeah.
people will work you to the bone. You're just a number to a lot of people,
Right.
and it's up to you to preserve, your energy. So
And it's funny, that brings up one other thing. And in weaving and integrating that sort of personal wellness and the comfort, and then the artistic success, which
yeah.
is naturally there, and it weaves and they sort of integrate together. It is the final realization of that, perhaps dictated by how well you can, in some ways, artistically and professionally and personally code switch, and finally actually, go from code switching to sort of just being yourself.
Yeah, I think I've been code switching forever. And it's this very, I think because as a classical Indian dancer, I learned very early how to play different roles, how
Yeah.
to carry God frequency. So
Right.
I like separated this concept of Raja Kumari from my personal self. I mean, now through my therapy in the last 2 years, I've realized that the character of Raja Kumari is built off of all the strong female characters from mythology that I played as a child. And
Yeah.
she's a warrior, and she's so fierce that she protects the broken child, and so now that she's so established and she's exhausted, okay, she is exhausting, and that is me. But I think the next project, like what I'm so I was supposed to release The Bridge. That was the album that was supposed to come out in August
Yeah.
of 2020. And H.B.I.C came first because it had to come first. It's an announcement. But at the
Yeah.
very end of the EP, I say The Bridge is coming.
Yeah.
And the bridge is the sonic bridge from, the west back to the east. The bridge is between, music is the bridge between us and God. It's the bridge between the ancient to the future, like bringing the classical. So I feel like where I'm going is going to show healing, is going to show integration. It's going to be more musical. And my last show I did with the 5-piece band, and I got addicted
Yeah.
to not just being an MC on a mic. Like, for me, the performance is the whole thing. Like, as a classical dancer, I'd go on stage in a costume, but I will show you Kurukshetra.
Yeah.
I will show you a chariot. I will show you every character. I will show you every emotion. So when I go on stage for my music, it has to be equally immersive.
It reminds me, or it makes me think of how patience sort of generates a lot of evolution. And you sharpened your whole craft through
Yeah.
writing and listening and observing. And is that patience required to absorb the lessons that you learn? And for that matter, is patience sort of a lost art in an era where nothing short of like instant success is celebrated?
Wow, you have the greatest questions. Yes. I think that's something so interesting. I don't know where it must be born into me as something I would need, for this dharma. I do believe I'm walking my dharma. That's why the doors keep opening, that
Sure.
this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing. My dad wanted me to be a doctor, but I told him I can heal more people through my music. I wanted to be a teacher. I was studying for religious studies, and I was like, I can actually teach more people through the music. So I believe that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But I feel that one thing that I've had to have and that has paid off for me is the patience. And it's so funny because I feel like even when I was young, I used to tell myself, I have patience is what I have so much of. Like, I am willing to wait for this plant to grow. I have seen it. As a kid, I got a vision of the future. I call it memory of the future. But I basically had a vision of myself on stage. I couldn't see myself. I could see out of my own eyes. And there was just a sea of like 80,000 people, something like 100,000, a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I felt the physical wave of energy, and like it went through my body. And then it was like I could see out of my eyes. I knew that I was older, I was stronger. I knew the frequency was so much more developed than who I was at 12. As soon as I came out of that vision, I said, how do I get there? That's the first thing I said, like a crazy person. So I feel like the patience to plant the seed, and to when I planted the seed, I already knew what the banyan tree would look like,
Yeah.
So it's like that patience was required. And in this era where things are getting shorter and shorter, the attention span is shorter. It's so sad that I put an album out and 2 days later it's old. It's like,
Yeah.
it took me a year, it took me years, it took me thousands of dollars to make this content, to upload it, to edit it. And it's just older like that. But there are those moments when people will message me and tell me a song off my first project saved their life today.
Yeah.
you know? And I keep myself understanding, especially with the passing of my friend Sidhu Moosewala, with him leaving the earth, in a tragic way. Every word he's ever said has become so much more important, every single article, every single quote. And I just tell myself that I just need to stay patient and I need to do exactly what I was sent to do. I don't need to start wearing skimpier clothes. I don't need to start talking about just Kama Sutra so that people in the West can relate to my ethnicity. I don't need to do any of those things to get a TikTok viral video, because if I just stay with the music, music is spiritual, it's divine. It's an offering that I really give from my heart to the world as like my life's work. And I know that it will pay off. I just know it will.
You're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. After a quick break, let's come back to our conversation with Raja Kumari. Welcome back to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. Let's rejoin our conversation now with Raja Kumari. Let me ask you this. There's a line in H.B.I.C. where you say that you're about to start a renaissance.
Yes.
And I was even thinking about sort of the kind of proclamation style of that song Dawn. And I wonder if there's an artistic kind of sweet spot that's sometimes difficult to stay at. And do people fall into a trap of constantly saying, gosh, that sounds too American, or suddenly everything's a mudra and too many jati and tal phrases, and that sounds too Indian. Are you constantly thinking about that, or do you not? I mean, in the light of what we've been talking about, do you just not care?
I don't care. I think I just naturally am from both sides. Like I just do whatever I hear. Like I was working on some project and the character had an Indian character, so I was rapping in English and I just went da 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 da, and they were like flipping out because it's just what I hear. I actually am both.
Yeah.
Because even though I grew up in Los Angeles and everything I'm saying is straight California, and in my home since I was 6 years old, I was doing 5 hours of Bharatanatyam every day. How am I supposed to be any different? People have been asking me a lot lately about like, what do you think your legacy will be? And I just feel like I just want to stay authentic. I want to, no matter what people think, there's so many opinions. I've had to write so many songs about people's opinions on my duality of identity. And I know like my fearlessness has encouraged others to adopt those things and make it more normal. Like, if you see the new spring of the fusion artists, they are following some of the trends that I was doing in 2016, which for me is really rewarding because I'm in a different place. So I know where I'm going is where I'm going to take everyone. And where I'm going is artistic. It's high art. It's not me in my underwear.
And let me ask you this then. I mean, when you say the word legacy, do you think about how artists technically age and evolve as they age? How do you reflect on that?
My legacy, I hope, is that I just keep, pushing the boundaries, but really it's about Godmother now. Like I really feel like I'm in the position in India, like I think a lot of people have issues saying like, oh, you're privileged, you're from America. But it's like, okay, what did I do with my privilege? I came home. I came back to where I really came from and I learned about what it's like to be an Indian, like to be someone my age in India. What are the real struggles? Not the imaginary struggles our parents brought in the 70s and have now made this like full time machine that the diaspora is running on.
Yeah.
It's not the end all be all to live in America forever. Like, I don't know where I'm going to end, but what I do know is that I truly love living in India. I see so much room for me to help people in a real way. And what I learned, in Los Angeles, sitting next to Timbaland and Dr. Dre and, Scott Storch and just name them. I've been in the room with them. I've made music. They know me, I have to obviously invest more in that. It can't be a distant memory. I want to come work, but I want to bring them to India. I want them to be in music songwriting camps and teaching these young producers so that the way the Latin community has the Latin Grammys, like I see a vision of us being in the mainstream and our art being respected from santur players over to rappers. Like our music, our culture deserves to be understood through us. Yeah. It deserves to not be exoticized. It deserves for the story to be told through us and not just diaspora voices. Yeah. Like I'm it's very important to me that I always try to like bring in like homegrown voices. Like whenever I do playlists, it's not just like me and Joy Crooks and Priya Raghu and Ravina Aurora. Like these are all diaspora people who have like benefited from being around different studios and stuff. I'm talking about, you know, MC Altaf and
Yeah.
DMC and people that like hip hop was like a joke and they had to fight for their art, you know? Like I'm here to bring more light to what's happening in India, and not just rappers,
Right.
singer-songwriters, musicians, just like I'm not gonna dictate how they are. I'm just gonna provide production value and guidance and
Steering.
songwriting help,
Yep.
you know? That should be the legacy, you know?
In that way, with that kind of legacy in mind, and thinking about you with sort of a front row seat to it, right? You mentioned earlier that there's the motherland and then there's the homeland, you know, and I love that in that way, as you've now been living in India for many years, but you sort of also have this yearning to be in the homeland, and vice versa for that matter. Does it give you a new empathy or a different empathy for your parents?
Of course. I think about like that they left with no FaceTime. They had to print pictures, write letters. My mom was 22. And I think now that, because, you know, we're all in, all of our generations, like in therapy, we're like, you said this and that's why it affects me. And it's like, they didn't get a chance to go to therapy. They didn't get a chance. She literally went from her dad's house to her husband's house, took care of her kids, and now we're older. And it's like, her sacrifice is why I'm a CEO, because she doesn't even know it, but it's like, she created a space that my dad and my mom together, you know, created a space where I could be an artist.
In that way, I imagine that your experience in some ways kind of transplanting into Mumbai, I could see in how that might relate to what the journey was that your parents took.
For them.
You know?
Yeah, I told him, I was like, you know, there's some lyrics in Manifest. I talk about 2 lives in 2 time zones, but I said, Daddy told me, why'd you move from America? I did all this work just to get you here, and now you ran back down to India.
Right.
And it's like 40 years ago, he left for opportunity, and I came back for opportunity. And I feel like that's the beautiful thing about India.
Yeah.
You know, like how beautiful that India, my dad was born in 1951. So just 4 years after, like, what is that? 4 years after independence.
Yeah.
And it's like, imagine, you know, like, I feel like that's such a beautiful thing that I would want to come. And I hope that other people come back. I think a lot of diaspora artists see like what I've done and what, like, you know, other diaspora people who have come to India and made a career here. It's definitely not easy. Yeah. It's definitely an alternate universe. Things do not work the regular way. Patriarchy rules the day. You have to be very smart. You got to get people to think it's their own idea. Right. You got to swallow a lot of pride. But India gives gifts unlimited. Like it just keeps flowing because it's the motherland. She loves you. She wants you home.
Let's imagine that you're speaking specifically to some of your newest listeners. Mm-hmm. And when they hear your music for the first time, what do you hope actually that they learn about you? And for that matter, how do you hope they feel about themselves?
I just hope they feel powerful. Yeah. In my darkest moments, I made this music to manifest my own power. And I feel like I've charged it with so much energy and hoping that it does the same in your life. And I just hope that, you know that what I'm saying is coming from a real place and that I have a lot that I want to do and a lot of different music to make. And if you are part of my, journey, that I hope we can enjoy it together and that I can give soundtrack to your life, because the next album, I'm digging so much deeper than just identity. Sveta is going to tell some stories in the next one. She's getting involved now. So.
Well, that sense of empowerment, that sense of giving, and your generosity of your art is really infectious. Raja, thank you so much for joining us.